Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live guest interview within Mindful Journey. So delighted to have you here today. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat function. I'm excited to bring you our guest, Kim LaMontagne. Kim actually was with us in Mindful Journey at the beginning of last year, or at some point last year, facilitating a coaching call. And my hope and intention is to involve her in many other features inside with course content and future coaching calls. But I thought she would also be a great guest for us to have just a free-flowing, raw and authentic conversation as she embodies authenticity and has vulnerably shared her story on many platforms throughout our country. Just a brief highlight to some of her accolades and resume, etc. She is an international speaker, mental health trainer for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, worked in the corporate America world for many, many years, and as she'll likely share with us today, what got her into facilitating programs on mental health is her own challenges with alcohol misuse, depression, anxiety. And those are all things, even if we're not maybe clinically diagnosed with, things that we experience as humans, anxious thoughts, anxious moments, or perhaps a depressive moment in time, a loss of a loved one that might get us into a negative pattern of behaviors that we otherwise wouldn't have engaged in. So, with that, I think the conversation today is always timely as we can use more vulnerability in our world. So, Kim, thank you for what you're doing in the world. Thanks for being with us. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Adam. That was a great recap of all things Kim LaMontagne. So thank you so much for sharing that and for welcoming me to this podcast. And I look forward to the conversation. And it will be a vulnerable one, but also one where people will walk away with some tips and tools.
Love that. Well, if you don't mind, Kim, for those who aren't familiar with you, who didn't hear your coaching call, and may not follow your work online, what brought you to this point of your work, and what is it that you're doing now through Kim LaMontagne LLC?
Sure. So, I am currently a corporate trainer on mental health and an international speaker. And what is a corporate trainer on mental health? I am a person who I work with leaders within organizations across all industries, and I teach and train those leaders how to normalize the conversation about mental health, how to create a culture where it's a safe space where people feel safe coming forward, asking for help and how to train those leaders, how to know the signs and be able to open a safe dialogue with someone and get them over to resources. Because as we know, as leaders, we're not counselors, but we are the first line of defense when it comes to seeing someone in our workplace in distress and then having the courage to open up those courageous conversations. And what led me here is my own experience. I've been in the corporate world for many years, and I was a top performer. I was a mover and a shaker. I was a leader, coach, a mentor in the workplace. But I was also that person who was consuming 5 to 9 glasses of wine every single night, followed by blackouts and hangovers. But I got up every day and I had the corporate job where I had to show up, and I actually intentionally overperformed in the workplace to conceal the fact that I felt like an imposter because I couldn't control my drinking at night. Um, I never drank during the day, but 5 o'clock was fair game in my household, and every single night I was consuming copious amounts of wine, which then led to me living with depression because I felt I wasn't worthy. I felt what's wrong with me? Why can't I get myself together? On one hand, I'm this high performing corporate executive, but in the background that no one sees, I'm falling apart at the seams. Um, I lived with anxiety. I was always in fight or flight mode. I had suicidal thoughts that were just in my mind all day, every day, which were so incredibly painful. And it wasn't until I had a conversation with my sister that I realized that suicidal thoughts they're not right. They do not belong in our minds because I truly believed that everyone lived with those thoughts until my sister looked me straight in the eye one day and said, "No, Kim, those thoughts are not right to have in your mind. Um, and what led me here is not just my own journey of living with alcohol misuse and now being almost 16 years sober. I'll be 16 years sober in July.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Um, what led me here was a leader in my workplace who, even though I was performing at a very high level, she saw the signs that something was slightly off with me. She hopped on a plane from Newark, New Jersey, and met me in Boston, Massachusetts, where she asked me the question with no judgment and with complete safety, Kim, are you okay? And my knee-jerk response was, sure, I'm fine, I'm great. But she followed it up with an, are you truly okay? Because I'm noticing some signs that you're not yourself. And at that point, this was 7 years into my sobriety. I was afraid to tell anyone for the first 7 years that I was sober because I thought I would lose my job or get demoted or be shamed. She was the first person I acknowledged that I was 7 years sober and I was riddled with depression, suicidal thoughts, and anxiety. She didn't heal me that day, but she gave me the opportunity to have a conversation, which then led me to get into counseling, which led me to a
Mm.
retreat that changed my life. And that's really, I credit her. I credit the doctor who saw me on July 16th, 2009, the day that I walked in and said, I need help. But I also credit her because she saw the subtle signs. She didn't dismiss them because I was a high performer. She jumped on a plane and came to see me. And that's the reason why I'm here today, because I want to train leaders to be like her and to have the conversations with people that could be life-changing for someone in their organization.
So powerful. You gave us even more than I learned about last time when you delivered a coaching call. And I'm glad you did, of course. And we'll never get through somebody's full story in just an hour, 2 hours, right? We've all got things that, we're still unpacking about ourselves that we may not even be aware of in the present. We learn them lessons later. So, not lost on me that there's so much more to your story, I trust. But I'm glad that you gave us that part. And of the many things that I could unpack, I'd like to hit on what you said that your leader did when she followed up with, are you truly okay? I believe, in my opinion, we ask surface level questions so often in our world today, like, how are you? And somebody says, oh, I'm doing good. How are you? And it's just like we pause there. What can we do, even if we're not in a leadership role, Kim, what can we do to really allow people to have the courage to not only ask the next question, but be willing to respond to that question? Because what I'm hearing, like your leader not only had the courage to ask the next question, but then you had the courage to respond to it. What can we do to allow that to happen more frequently?
Well, I can tell you a couple of things, and I hope I don't lose my train of thought. But I was on a call last night, a coaching call last night, and someone on the call said, "We communicate right now to communicate. We don't communicate to connect." And I thought, that's exactly what you just described. Hey, how are you doing? I'm great. How are you? That's communicating. But with her, she didn't let it stop there because I could have let it stop there and I could have just glided right over. Let's get down to the performance and look at the performance, get the light off me.
Hmm.
She wanted the light to be on me. And what she did that day was she was a very transactional leader, and she had to be. We were in a very numbers-oriented environment. It was leads, it was enrollments, it was projections, it was forecasting, it was in-person events, it was everything. It was a lot of metrics. And she was very transactional in her leadership style, which I loved working for her, but at the same time, her transactional nature was because of my anxiety and depression many times and my feelings of imposter syndrome. Many times I would fear getting on calls with her because I'm like, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough. It's just not enough. But that day, I clearly could see that she took off that transactional leadership style hat and put on more of a transformational slash coaching leader. And what I can say to anyone watching this podcast is to make it a part of your daily routine that when you check in with people, you don't just communicate, you connect with them. I was working yesterday at a job, another completely unrelated job that I have, and it was a very stressful day. And at the end of the day, our entire team was just like, "Whoa, we got through that." And there were the two leaders who led this entire process that I was involved in yesterday that was quite stressful. They were sitting down together in an office. I said, "You guys doing okay?" They said, "Yep, we're doing fine." I said, "All right, are you truly okay? Because we just went through a lot in the past like 4 hours together. Are you truly okay?" And they both looked at me in the eye and was like, "Yeah, Kim, we are. We're okay." But it was totally different from, "Yeah, we're okay," to looking me straight in the eye and saying, "Yes, Kim, we're truly okay." And then I
Yes.
followed it up by saying, "Well, if you're not, let's talk about it." And just
Yes.
it's creating that bubble of
Hmm.
safety where people know that you're asking a question because you truly want to know the response versus just doing it at surface level, like you said.
Hmm. Why do you believe so many of us wear these masks that we're unwilling to show and reveal our real selves?
Oh, I could go on and on and on about that question. I think social media has a lot to do with it. Social media has a lot to do with it. And I know personally, I've backed off on social media quite a bit because, and I post certain things on Facebook, even on LinkedIn. I'm seeing a growing number of, I love celebrating other people, but I also just see a growing number of ways that people compare themselves to
Hmm.
others. And I will tell you that people wear a mask because they don't want to be seen as a fraud, which is
Hmm.
also known as what I've mentioned a couple of times, imposter syndrome, which is basically where we feel like we're walking around and we're getting accolades that we don't deserve. Maybe we're in the job that we don't deserve because we don't believe in ourselves enough. And I did a webinar for one of my clients last week on imposter syndrome. It was a global webinar. We had 941 people attend that webinar. And when I asked how many are living with imposter syndrome, Adam, the chat blew up. I think I hit a nerve. And to me, that tells me it's okay to take off our masks because none of us are truly okay. We're all trying to survive the best that we can. So it's about changing our thought process and our belief systems and acknowledging that we do deserve what we've earned and that we
Hmm.
deserve to celebrate our successes.
Hmm. So well said. So well said. I agree with you wholeheartedly about the social media piece. It's a constant highlight reel of people's lives. And but I am somebody I know we're connected on social media. I've always put out positive type of quotes, etc. And I am pretty vulnerable on there, perhaps to a fault, sharing shortcomings, etc. But
Mhm.
even me, right, somebody who like I pride myself on vulnerability, I'm not going to share, my absolute worst of worst moments, right? If I lose a big client or I lose a big prospective deal. So what folks might perceive about my life is Adam's got it all together all the time, which I do pride myself on not having like quote unquote bad days, but I have bad moments like we all do.
Yep.
And I say that to thank you for your reminder to us that social media, although can be so good, can also be detrimental if not attentive to how we're consuming. So
Mhm.
love that you said that. We do have a guest question that came in that I really liked, excuse me, and it said you should be able to see it. on your screen too. But
Oh,
what
yes.
gave you the courage to admit you needed help? I know sometimes it can be scary or difficult to do.
Wow. Well, there are so many things that I really, or so many times when I wanted to seek help, but I always just had that fear of if I seek help, I can't drink anymore and I can't do that. That's my crutch. So then
Mm.
I would just say, okay, I'll seek help tomorrow. What truly led me, and it still took me time to seek help, but on July 4th, 2009, I'm going to be very vulnerable here and say that I had a 4th of July party at my own house. We always had the parties at my house, so I didn't have to drink and drive. But we had a lot of neighborhood parties, and they were many times they were at my house. I woke up on July 5th, and at the time I was married, and my husband said to me, because I asked him, what happened last night, and why are there black marks all over my white jeans that I passed out and fell asleep in? He told me that I came within inches of falling into the fire pit because I was dancing around and I tripped and I fell.
Mm.
That was on July 5th, 2009. I was sick to my stomach, not just from the hangover, but by the thought of that, by the thought of that. I knew at that point I needed help, but I was still afraid to acknowledge it because if I acknowledged it, I had to give it up. And it took me until July 16th, 2009 to finally make the phone call to my doctor's office that I needed help. And the stars aligned that day because I called at 4:45 in the afternoon and I got an appointment at 5:15. That never ever happens.
Never, yeah. Usually it's 6 weeks, 6 months.
Yep. And I didn't even say why I was coming in. I said it's a personal matter. And there was a brand new nurse practitioner who was on staff there. I had never seen him before, and he was the person I was going to see. And he found me curled up in a ball in a corner crying when he walked into the room. And when I finally gathered my composure and told him why I was there, he looked me straight in the eye and said, Kim, I am going to help you, and we are going to do this together.
Mm, amazing.
And gives me goosebumps because he was my biggest champion throughout my entire, not my entire, because my journey is ongoing, but my during the first several years of my sobriety. He was there, no judgment, all just, I'm going to be here for you and help you and tell you what to expect, what it's going to look like. Let's get a plan together. I mean, I couldn't have asked for the timing to have been better on that day and to have met a more kind and caring nurse practitioner than he was.
Yes, yes, yes. That's so amazing. And another just reminder of how important uh, the people around us are, how important a role they play in our ability to get through things, to overcome, to navigate challenges, and appreciate you sharing that, Kim. I'm curious if I'm so, so proud of what you've done in 16 years of sobriety. Not only have you remained, consistent to self and winning each day and, staying free of alcohol misuse, but now you're spreading your message of hope. Do you ever have desire to have a glass of wine again? And if so, how do you, because I'm betting there's somebody listening today who, because I hear from people all the time that, they were 6 months of sobriety and then they had a bad moment and then they reverted back to. So question one is, do you still have a desire? And if so, what do you do to ensure that you're able to overcome that and win the moment so that you don't revert back?
That's a great question, and I hope there's someone here watching and who needs to hear this message that if you relapse, if you make a mistake, it's okay. And if you have to start over from ground zero, it's okay. we want to avoid taking that first drink. And yes, I do still get cravings on occasion. I personally am one of the lucky ones who I can be around alcohol and it doesn't bother me. People don't have to change their habits when Kim's in the room. You know, you don't have to hide your drink or anything like that. I will gladly drink a soda water with lime and cranberry juice. And that's what I did in the very beginning, by the way. I would always show up to a party with a drink or immediately get myself a soda water with a lime and cranberry juice to make it seem like I was drinking because those first 7 years, I mean, my entire corporate family knew me as the life of the party at all the sales meetings, and I wasn't drinking. So I had to come up with a, why aren't you drinking? I had to answer that question. Um, but anyway, I'll go back to cravings. I'm one of the lucky ones who can be around it. But on a rare occasion, and in other work that I do, I'm around alcohol. I do catering just on the side.
Mhm.
And I'm around it, so it doesn't bother me in any way, shape, or form. But sometimes I might get a whiff of that white wine as I'm working with it, and I get it, and it immediately brings it starts the salivatory glands going. I start to salivate a little bit, and I immediately think, nope, you are not allowed to go there. You are not allowed to go there. You are not allowed to go there. I just immediately put up these walls that just say, I'm not allowed to go there.
Mhm.
Because I know that that one sip, it's the end. And I will start drinking again. So I've built these protective walls that if I'm ever in that situation, they go up and I listen to them. But it took me a while to build those walls and easily listen to them. And I guess what I mean by that is, there were times where I'm like, okay, maybe, well, maybe, oh, maybe. I don't sit there anymore at all. It's nope, I can't.
Yes.
It'll always be there for me.
Yes. Yes. It's powerful to hear you say that you've been able to almost like train your mind to not give in to the temptation. Because one of
Yep.
the things I'm so fascinated by is just, pure human behavior. Why do we do what we do? And I've asked so many guests inside Mindful Journey and been, fortunate to have some folks who have, years and years worth of mental health training, psychiatrists from, Ivy League institutions, et cetera, people who have the credentials, right, to help and to heal. But even great information doesn't always change situations. And that's what these guests have said. I've asked, how do we get people to want to change? And
Right.
here I am talking with someone today, yourself, who has made radical change and has continued to find ways to stay away from the thing that you might have that nudge back to. So, Kim, would you mind sharing with us maybe one, two, three things? I'm sure there's no golden nugget, if you will, that you've relied on, but is there something that you can point to that's allowed you to strengthen your mind so when that temptation arises, you don't go back to, old Kim, if you will, the life of the party
Yep.
that your colleagues knew you as?
It's those walls, and I compare them to if you've ever been bowling before. My dad used to own a bowling alley, so I grew up around bowling. But you can go to the bowling alley now and they have these bumpers that you can put up in the gutters so that it doesn't allow you to get a gutter ball. Have you seen those
Of
before?
course, yeah.
Okay.
I use
So,
them all the time. I'm a terrible bowler. I have not been in a while, but they are usually up when I'm bowling.
oh, that's funny. Well, a fun fact, I was a state champion in Massachusetts for bowling when I was in fifth, sixth, and seventh grade. So I used to be an avid bowler.
That's awesome. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Um, so if for those who need like a visual of the walls, and this is really the one thing that I've done that allows me to really, not go there. And I don't get the cravings as frequently as many others do.
Mhm.
Um, but if I am at a bowling alley and I throw a ball and those gutters are up, it doesn't allow me to go onto the left, which is the past. It doesn't allow me to go to the right, which is the future. It only allows me to stay in the here and the now. It only allows me to
Mhm.
throw that ball straight down the bowling alley. I'm never going to get a gutter because those walls are up. That's where my mind has to stay. It has to stay in the right now, I can't take this drink. Right now, I can't take this drink. It can't be going into the past of, well, maybe I can just have one. Maybe it won't be so bad. Or it can't go into the future of, what would happen if I did this? No, I can't even think about those things. I can
Mhm.
only think about what the gutter ball protectors are protecting me from, and it's keeping me right here in the now.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing that I've used as well, and this is a tactic that I share with every single person, is, and this is where you can challenge your limiting beliefs. I'm not worthy. I'm a failure. I deserve this drink. Um, it's the work of Byron Katie. I don't know if you've ever heard of her.
Mhm.
Her first name is Byron, last name is
Mhm.
Katie. Many times she just goes by Katie. Excuse me. And she has this process called the work, where whenever you have a stressful thought, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, um, Janie doesn't like me, because many times our mind just makes up these thoughts and we just kind of go rampant with them. I put myself through four questions, and her four questions are, is that thought true? You have to find the evidence that this thought is true. So if you're fixated on Janie doesn't like me, you have to find the evidence that that thought is actually true.
Mhm.
The second is, are you absolutely certain that what you're thinking and believing is true? So she gives you two opportunities to dismiss that thought. If you're still finding the quote unquote evidence, the third question is, how do you feel? Who do you become? How do you feel physically? How do you feel mentally when you believe that Janie doesn't like you? Well, you probably feel sick to your stomach. Maybe you feel inadequate. Maybe, it gives you the opportunity to show you what that thought is actually doing to you.
Mhm.
Then, if you want to, you can go back to number one and ask, is it really true? Because the fourth question is, who would you be without that thought? Wow, well, if I didn't believe that, I'd be free, I'd be light as a feather, I'd be all these things. For me, the depression, the anxiety, the suicidal thoughts, and also the alcohol misuse, all of those things combined benefited by me using the work of Byron Katie. And it was because of my leader that I went on to a workshop back in 2016 where Byron Katie was the facilitator and she changed my world with those four questions.
Amazing. Amazing. I love the last one in particular of, well, who would you be without it, right? Is that
Right.
the so who would you be without it? Yeah, I think too many times we hold on to this limiting vision of us and we attach to it. We find all this supporting evidence out in the world that reinforces that view of us. But what this question's really doing is disrupting that. Well, who would I be
Yeah.
without this? Then you give yourself what I always believe like some of our greatest strengths as human is our ability to imagine, right? Like, and we lose that over time after failure stack, after hardship, after difficulties. So that question in and of itself gives you permission to imagine again and kind of envision life like this blank canvas. Who would I be? So, Kim, let me ask you, when you went through that exercise, who did you envision yourself to be?
Oh, when I was thinking negative thoughts, I was a loser. I was an imposter. I was,
Well, I'm
hmm?
sorry, yeah, more so when you went through the exercise, who did you want to be? Like, who was the Kim that that question gave you courage to chase and to pursue?
Oh yeah. It's Kim, the person who is happy, who is free, who is spreading hope, being courageous, being vulnerable, all of those things. It's exactly what I'm doing today. But before I
Amazing.
found the work of Byron Katie, I wasn't able to move past those limiting beliefs of I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I don't deserve this, I'm not smart enough.
Hmm.
And that's again how my walls have really grown and become solid over time because, like you, I have bad moments too. But I allow that bad moment to live for maybe a microsecond, and then I think, wait a minute, hold on a second here. Let me put this through the thoughts, put it through the questions. Um, doesn't mean that sometimes I jump over and I get a gutter ball because sometimes maybe that one wall isn't there, but I quickly have trained my mind to realize what any particular thought is doing to me, and if it's doing something bad to me, I have to challenge it and say, stop thinking about that. It doesn't belong here. Um,
Hmm.
so it's a lot. It's a lot of really being in tune to my mental capacity and not allowing those frightening, fearful, limiting beliefs to take control over a person who is vibrant and here to spread hope.
Hmm. Hmm. Beautifully said. I'd like to shift just a little bit for I know I intended us to be heavy, of course, and I love this, the vulnerability. And I want to continue on the theme of overcoming, but maybe in a lighter context for folks who might not be dealing with, alcohol misuse or addiction in its most severe form as we perceive it. There is addiction in a this might not be the correct terminology, but a lesser form of sorts, right? Through food, overconsumption of Netflix, Amazon
Yeah,
Prime,
all
social
of it.
media, all of it. So what's your message? And that might be, relatable to somebody who, because I think everyone struggles with addiction in some capacity, be it chocolate, what we may perceive as not as bad, or something like a heroin or cocaine or something that is more a hard drug. So, well, Kim, for those who are, wanting to just change something in their life, be it a habit or if they have an addictive tendency elsewhere, uh, do you have any methodology beyond those questions that you might recommend that can give them the inspiration to get started? Something just small that maybe they don't change their whole life in this moment, but perhaps something you can recall, like journaling or meditation, anything just looking for a habit that somebody can take away that they can begin training their self to engage with to make a shift.
Yes, that's a great question, and I would say one of the best tools you can have is an accountability partner or a mentor. Someone who you trust enough to say, and I was just having this conversation during a counseling session the other day with a woman who is struggling with the bowls of candy that are at her work because she'll start eating the bowl of candy and then it's over with. I said, "Well, do people at work know that you struggle with this?" And she says, "No, I'm too afraid to say anything." And I said,
Mhm.
"Well, so she was too afraid to talk about that. And then we got to the point where she was able to identify someone in her work who basically just she is feels safe enough saying, "This is what I struggle with. Can you help keep me accountable?" So, and I'm very much a proponent of having an accountability partner because they help motivate you, like going to the gym. They help motivate you, like staying on your diet, exercising, whatever it is that maybe you're struggling to stay on the straight and narrow with having that one other person or multiple people um, help you is a good thing. Um, there's another thing that you can do in terms of having other people in your life be able to identify when you're having a problem. So maybe you live with depression, maybe you live with suicidal thoughts, or you live with anxiety, or you live with a particular form of addiction, and you're hiding it. I encourage you to take off the mask with the correct person and give them insight into what it's like. So basically, tell them exactly what to look for when you are having a difficult time. What physical or mental traits do you portray? What things do you start to do when this particular thought or feeling is present, when you're actually struggling? Tell them what to look for. Give them permission to tap you on the shoulder and say, Adam, you told me that if you started to miss two deadlines in a row, that something's probably off because you're very deadline oriented. So if I'm going to keep an eye, and you told me to tap you on the shoulder, so here I am. So tell them what to look for, give them permission on um, what to do, or give them permission to help you, and then tell them exactly what helps you. And I share this because I'm not a fan of Walmart by any stretch of the imagination because of the size of the store. It gives me anxiety, so I try not to go into Walmart. So, for instance, if one of my accountability partners doesn't know that that stresses me out, he or she might see that I'm having a problem and be like, Kim, I'm coming over to your house right now. I'm going to pick you up and we're going to go for a ride. And then we end up at Walmart. Now they're causing me more anxiety. Um, Tell them exactly what helps you, because if they don't know what helps you, then they're just going to guess at what's best. So
Mhm.
and empower them. Empower them to step in and help you, because sometimes people really want to step in and help, but they're like, I'm not sure if I should.
Mhm. Mhm.
So hopefully that helps.
Definitely helps. Yeah, I love the account. I love both pieces of it, particularly the accountability one for me, for my own life. But I think both pieces of advice are valuable. For folks, you bring up a great point there on the latter part of your suggestions to us about people not always knowing how to intervene. People who might be the onlookers of said habits that are detrimental from that they're viewing from afar. Do you have any recommendations if there's a family member, for instance, who has a son or daughter who is spiraling in a negative path, and they don't know how to bring up the topic with them, or if it's kind of like your colleague did years ago, your leader who flew all the way to see you because she knew something wasn't quite right. A lot of people, I think, sit on the sidelines because they don't want to offend somebody if their assumption isn't accurate. So, would you mind walking us through what a person who is, a viewing that somebody has changed their behavior, perhaps for the worse, how can they have that difficult conversation with an individual?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So, having the conversation, number one, is it's courageous. It is absolutely courageous. And many times, I know from my own personal perspective, I always thought my eyes gave it away. Like when I looked at people, I always thought that they knew I was struggling, but no one had a clue. Um, and it's basically, talking to that person and saying, I'm noticing that your behavior has changed slightly, or I'm noticing some signs that you may be struggling with this particular project. I'm noticing some signs where you've been late a few times this week. Is everything okay? Is there anything I can do to help support you? And going back to, don't communicate just to communicate, but communicate to connect with that person so that they feel. And I should say, it may not happen on the very first conversation that the person feels safe enough to say anything.
Yeah.
You don't want to nag, but if those things are persisting, truly be concerned and show empathy and a lot of concern about I'm concerned that something might be wrong. And I'm not a counselor, but I know as your leader that I can get you to all these resources. I can try to help you, but let's have an open conversation. And creating that bubble of safety is the most important thing. And when people are hurting and they're wearing a mask, they know the people who are just asking the question just to know what's going on versus the people who are asking the question because they truly have concern over that person.
Great advice again. I love it, Kim. We're getting a master class on not only leadership, but on how we can navigate our own, self-limiting, because I think some of that is self-limiting beliefs of, not knowing if they'll receive me well if I speak up. So what I'm hearing from you is deploying a compassion and empathy and being intentional on the tonality of like of how we deliver the question, but also the word
Mhm.
choice, right? The word choice
Yeah.
matters.
And
With
giving people permission to step in because that decreases the fear of should I or should I not ask the question. Where if I tell you, Adam, all of my signs, like if I'm having a depressive episode, one of my signs is I overperform.
Mhm.
I used to tell my team all the time, if you see me like with a task list with 30 items on it, like 30 big items on it, or I don't know, I gave them a number. Uh, Ask me if I'm okay, because I'm probably not. I gave them permission, if
Yes.
so it's look for this little sign. It's not going to look very obvious, but
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
giving you the key.
Hmm. With all of your work in the mental health space and being a actual assigned trainer, I think in the state of Florida through National Alliance on Mental Illness, what is something surprising for our listeners today that the common person may not know, be it a statistic or terminology about mental health, just something that maybe when you learned it, it was a bias that you'd had that was completely alarming to you, something that the common listener may not know about mental health.
Yeah. So I would say number one, you are not alone. That was something that I thought for many, many years. And according to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, 1 in 5 people will experience a mental health condition or live with a mental health condition. So that's 20% of the people around you are experiencing a mental health challenge. Um, the other thing that I found to be alarming, and I'm also on the board of the Florida Recovery Friendly Workplace Coalition, and focuses a lot on substance abuse or substance misuse. 70% of illicit drug users are actually employed.
Mm.
And that's another piece of my story that Adam, you're special today because I've never shared this piece of my story in a podcast before.
So thank you. I'm excited to hear.
So there's two segments of this piece. When I was actively drinking prior to entering into sobriety and I was performing at a very, very, very high level, I had 4 surgeries on my shoulder, which were very much warranted. I had a very difficult time with each one of them. I just didn't heal properly. I was under medical supervision and I was given Vicodin. And I knew back then while I was consuming alcohol that I really truly enjoyed Vicodin too. Like I loved getting my prescription refilled because Vicodin made me feel this sense of peace, this sense of warmth, this sense of it's almost like what alcohol did to me, but it was just on another level. So, in essence, looking back on it, I never sought out any illegal prescriptions or anything like that, but I truly enjoyed, although my shoulder surgeries were so painful, I truly enjoyed being
Mm.
prescribed Vicodin on a regular basis. So I was addicted to Vicodin while my surgery my shoulder surgeries were going on while I was overperforming in the workplace. Never even gave that a thought because once my shoulder surgeries were done and I fully healed and the Vicodin was gone, yes, I experienced withdrawal, but I never said, oh, I need more. I need to figure out how to get more. I never went down that path.
Mhm.
Fast forward to 2009, I enter into sobriety. 2010, I have my tonsils removed. I'm sober now and I'm given Vicodin. And I immediately said, uh-oh, this is not good for me. At that point, I connected the fact that I was not only a high performer with a substance misuse problem, excuse me, an alcohol misuse problem. Part of my story is that I had a substance misuse problem. Like even after the shoulder surgery was done and I got, I had a little bit of pain and the doctor said, don't be a martyr. I said, okay, sure, give me another prescription for 90. And I milked it as far as I could, but I never, once the pain was gone, it was gone. So I'm part of that statistic of 70% of people who are misusing substances are employed. I was part of that, and I've never truly spoken about it. But right now, and as of 2000 in 2010, I asked my doctor to put a no opioid sticker on my medical chart so that no doctor can ever prescribe me an opioid ever again. And
Kim,
I
thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, sorry. No.
you're welcome. And I have to hope that sharing that part of my story and any part of my story can help someone who's watching to say, "Oh my gosh, she's speaking directly to me," because I hid that piece until right now.
I feel humbled that you would share it with us, and I'm so grateful that you're releasing and having the courage to give all of us that gift because I think it is a gift, Kim, that and as I mentioned to you on the front end of this, we're all still revealing parts of self to the world and to ourselves to some extent. So grateful for your vulnerability. Thank you for that message. And wow, I wasn't expecting that because I thought, I knew so forgive me for I'm usually not at a loss for words and I'm not at a loss in a negative way. I'm wanting to, capture this in a moment that we can really help people who might be in a work environment today who either are going through it themselves or knowing somebody who is to to lend compassion for that experience because you had an incredible amount of compassion for self, is what I'm gathering after you realized that you had a quote unquote problem. You said, okay, this isn't my identity forever. And so much so that you had your doctors ensure that they could never prescribe you opioids again. What did your doctor say when you said that? Did they ask why? Did they think that you had an addiction to it, or what did that experience look like?
My doctor gave me a high five. He was so proud of me for saying that to him. I had no idea, and nobody had any idea because outwardly I'm fine. And the prescriptions that they had given me, um, back in the day when I had my shoulder surgery, they were valid. And
Mhm.
the prescription that they gave me for my tonsils was valid. And I'm going to be honest, for a split second, I thought, oh, I'm not going to say anything because, oh, I kind of like this. Maybe I'll just,
Mhm.
abstain from alcohol, but maybe anytime I get the chance, I'll get Vicodin. And then I said, just what you said, Adam. That's not me anymore. And I know it's not right for me. And I just told him, I said, I have this addictive person. I was telling my ear, nose, and throat doctor, I said, I
Mhm.
have an addictive personality. I have a history of alcohol misuse. And I said, I know immediately that I cannot have this substance because I want you to prescribe it to me forever. And he said, I can't, like, I don't remember his exact words, but it was basically, I can't believe you just said that to me, Kim. That was so bold of you to do that. I will happily put it on your chart and protect you.
That's amazing. So amazing. Wow, that makes me want to. I know we've got 10 minutes left, but it kind of springs about a topic that um, I one of the guests I had, Dr. Anna Lemke, she wrote a book. Her most recent one was Dopamine Nation, but prior to that, it was talking about the opioid crisis. And I admittedly didn't read that book. I have a little familiarity with it. I did read Dopamine Nation, but from what I recall of her research is that a lot of doctors were over, prescribing in many occurrences. And I know we can't unpack all of that, but if we have any medical practitioners listening today or family members of medical practitioners, do you have any recommendations for those folks for how they can help people who were maybe in your shoes, who had an addictive personality? Because if you didn't have the courage to speak up and ask for that, your doctor would have happily continued to prescribe it to no fault of their own, per se. But is there anything that medical practitioners can do, or family members of medical practitioners who might be able to share with them to ensure that folks who don't need opioids, don't get opioids?
So I'm not a medical practitioner and I don't play one on TV. So, but what I would say is, and I think that the medical community has shifted where they're not prescribing opioids like they used to. They're being, from what I'm hearing and seeing, they're being very careful, limiting opioids and just being very careful about prescribing. But for those who do become addicted, don't judge. And it might be like, wow, well, they're healthcare professionals. They would never judge. When I do my training on mental health in the workplace, I talk about the power of words. And in the healthcare community, there's a phrase called a frequent flyer that I've heard used on multiple occasions, and it's to no one's fault unless they know. But when a frequent flyer is basically maybe someone's working in the emergency room and they see this particular person who is usually coming in for something that, and they're a frequent quote unquote drug seeker. So they call them a frequent flyer, like, oh, here comes John Doe, another frequent flyer. Well, what you're doing at that point is you are stripping him of being a person and you are inserting all judgment, all stigma, and you are not treating that person fairly. So to call him or look at him and say that he's a person who's living with substance misuse gives that person dignity back and allows them to get the care that they truly need. I
Mhm.
think frequent flyer is used in a few different industries, but in healthcare, I've heard that. And many times when I do webinars or content for healthcare professionals, they readily say, yeah, I've used that before. And after today, I won't say that anymore.
That's amazing. Yeah, it reinforces stigma, the stigma too, right? Like I've heard a lot of times in our society when we think of mental health, the adjectives that come to mind are crazy or, unstable, etc. Whereas if it's blood pressure diagnosis or cancer diagnosis, it's normalized because it's a personal health thing, and the we have empathy for those folks and compassion because it's, something that is physical. But with mental, just the word use, oh, well, he's crazy or she's crazy, that in and of itself can lessen somebody's courage to speak up about what's going on here because they don't want to be labeled that. So it's a powerful piece you just shared with us. I did not know that. One of the many new things I learned today from you. I'd like to
Surprise!
close. Yeah. I'd like to close, Kim, with some inspiration, some encouragement. You've already given us so much of that, but for all those listening in who, again, if they're not dealing with an addictive tendency, if they don't have family members who are navigating alcohol misuse, or they don't have colleagues to their knowingness that is having a challenge with alcohol, what's your general message for somebody who might just be dealing with life, though? The person who is perhaps navigating a divorce, having financial difficulties, facing that imposter syndrome. If they're hopeless listening today and they're wanting to not give up, hopefully, on life, but give up in their dreams, give up on their goals, give up in their career progression, what's your message to that person today?
Oh, I've probably been there and all of those things that you just described, and that my message would be that it's going to be okay. Everything is going to work out. Life doesn't have to be perfect for it to be wonderful. And to really work on, hopefully you're able to capture and really grasp that visualization, but think of the bowling alley lane, and then think of those little gutter protectors so that your mind can't go into the past and be anxious or go into the future and be depressed, or vice versa. It's vice versa. Um, really stay in the here and the now because everything is going to be okay. And if you do need help, I encourage you. I once stood in front of about 40 of my own coworkers and shared this personal story that I shared with you today. I shared with them minus the substance misuse. Today was the first time I really talked about that. Um, and 8 of my own coworkers stepped forward to acknowledge that they were living with mental illness, that they had a son or daughter or a husband living with a mental health challenge or with alcohol misuse. I stood up in front of my own work family back in 2017, shared my story, and 8 people stood up to say, me too. So if you're feeling like you're the only person in the world who is unlovable or feeling like you're losing control because of alcohol, substance misuse, depression, anxiety, hold on. You are worthy. You belong here. Um, and reach out and ask for help because the more we talk about it, the better we will all be. We have to talk about it judgment free.
Definitely, definitely. Great and powerful way, and encouraging way to close, knowing that we're not alone and that there's something beyond today. So true, Kim, and so well said. Thank you so much for your time. I'll send you this recording and we'll be staying in touch, of course, and looking forward to future collaboration. But so grateful for you today. And thank you again for joining us. And for those who made it with us this far, thank you for being here as well. I hope you're as moved by Kim's story as I have been. And please continue to spread this message of hope throughout our world because we all can certainly benefit from it.
Thank you so much, Adam, and thank you everyone who's been watching. It's been a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. Take care, Kim, and see everyone.
Take care.
Mhm.
Bye.